Hey, Slikk here, and right now I'm gonna give you some slick tips for salsa bass playing. When I first started playing salsa music, the thing that struck me is that no one else was helping me for the low end. I was the only one playing, the bass frequencies, the things that people feel and make them want to dance. Because in a traditional salsa group, the rhythm section is comprised of piano, timbales, congas, bongos, and bass. As you can see, there is no kick drum going on. In almost any kind of modern dancing music, there is a kick drum going on, be it, funk music, R&B, house music, whatever. You got a, you got a fat drum tone, but not so in salsa music. So to compensate for this, you gotta get a super fat tone, a super boomy tone. It's not all about the clarity so much. You gotta play. When I started playing, a singer once told me the bass has to sound like a drum with a pitch to it. So if you really focus on getting that tone, the whole band will sound great, and then people will be dancing. If you don't focus on that tone and use a generic tone or a jacko tone or a rock tone, you won't get them people dancing the same way because something will not be there. It's not gonna happen. How do I get that tone? Well, basically, this tone, to make a long story short, is the tone of an Ampeg electric upright bass, which is more commonly known nowadays as a Ampeg baby bass. It's Ampeg's electrified version of an acoustic bass because most of Latin music was played on an upright bass. In the 60s, they invented it to be able to play louder and in a more compact format. But the Ampeg baby bass didn't have a lot of success for jazz players or traditional acoustic bass players because it had a very thuddy, thumpy and dark tone. Because a baby bass is built of fiberglass and it has a magnetic pickup, which is like the pickup you could find in a Fender instrument. So it doesn't have a very natural, open acoustic tone at all. Acoustically, it sounds like boom, boom. It sounds like this, boom. You don't have a lot of overtones to it. The problem is, most people can't afford a vintage Ampeg baby bass nowadays, and even back then, lots of people were very comfortable on Fender basses. To play a baby bass, you gotta play it like an upright, which is a different technique. So, when I first started playing salsa music, I tried a whole lot of different things to get that tone. And I find the best thing to do, but I find it by myself, and it's a funny story, you'll see why later. About a Fender P, well, not really Fender, but it's exactly the same thing I built myself. A Fender P bass with a vintage pickup, heavy gauge flat mounts, and foam under the strings. I've seen Robbie Shakespeare, you know, from Sly and Robbie, the reggae bass player, using a lot his thumb, and Fred Thomas, or Fred Thomas from James Brown, using the thumb, and a couple of blues players using their thumb, and so on, to get, and all of them were getting the round, fat tone. So naturally, I used my thumb too. And one day, I heard a record by Charlie Palmieri with this, which is Giant Steps. And actually, this is the great Bobby Rodriguez playing on that record. And he's the very player that first started playing with Tito Puente in the 50s on upright bass. But very soon, in the late 60s, early 70s, he was one of the first to switch not to Ampeg bass, baby bass, but Fender bass. He was playing a Fender P bass, as you can see on that picture. And that picture, to me, is worth a lot, because I was like, man, I thought I found a kind of my style of doing, you know, that fat baby bass tone. But it's kind of funny, because actually this is the Bobby Rodriguez approach. Now, if you want to really get that authentic vintage bass tone, you really gotta get an Ampeg tone. An Ampeg head tone, that is, the B15 tone, which was used very widely in the 60s and 70s and early 70s. Because Ampegs tend to round up the sound and give a low boost and add thumpiness. You know, if you don't have this, any kind of amp simulator, I use Line 6 B15 model, and it's, as you can probably hear, is not too shabby. It's not that bad. So here's the full tip to get a baby bass tone on an electric bass. First, get yourself a Fender bass. A jazz will do, but the precision is better because it's thumpier. Then put heavy gauge flat wounds on it. The heavier the better. I use Labella Jameson set. Then get yourself a nice piece of foam or sponge and stuff it right under the strings. It got to kill the decay. If it just adds some color, it's not doing its purpose. It gotta sound like dun, dun. If it sounds like dun, you don't have enough foam under your strings. If you can, use a vintage pickup. In a precision bass, it has just a lot more thump and warmth to your sound. Then use your thumb and strike the strings as hard as you can, and strike it near the end of the neck. Then, if you can, use an Ampeg simulation, or better yet, a real Ampeg. Boost the bass, cut the highs, and cut even more the mids. That way you'll get a scoop down, which is no problem in a salsa band, because no matter what, trust me, you'll get heard. No problem about this. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and maybe learn a thing or two. I'm Slikk Tim, and I'll see you next time for another Slikk tip. Peace out.